Hey, good morning. Welcome to SportsBeat Live, our weekly conversation about the Royals with the folks in the media world who know them best. And with you, please send us your questions and comments, and we'll get to as many of them as we can. Before getting started, I want to thank our sponsor, the University of Kansas Health System. They've been with us all season, and you'll hear from them later in the show. So the gang's all here. Let's welcome in beat writer Lynn Worthy, columnist Sam Mellinger, and Vahe Gregorian, and someone else has crashed our little get together. It is none other than Joe Posnanski. Hey, Joe.
We didn't have fancy stuff like this when I was at the Star. We didn't. We If we wanted to all get together, we would just have to be at an Applebee's or something. This is completely crazy. Seeing everybody, it's great to see all of you.
What's up, Joe?
You too, Joe.
So glad you can join us, Joe. So look, as a way of introduction, Joe, and correct me if I'm wrong with any of this biographical information.
Oh boy.
Lead sports columnist, a lead sports columnist at the Star from '96 until 2009, perhaps. Am I in the ballpark there?
Yeah, 2010, right around there.
And okay, plenty of memorable Royal seasons as part of that.
And Chief seasons, and KU seasons, and K-State seasons. Yeah, no, it was. And look, we know they're all happy I'm gone. I get it. I brought nothing but heartache and pain my entire time in Kansas City.
Got out right with the 2012 Chiefs, though. I gotta throw that in there.
You always want to throw in like one team that you had, and then of course
I got playing.
That leads to you like getting to cover Patrick Mahomes. So I'm not really feeling sorry for you in any way, shape, or form.
All right. Well, since leaving the Star, I know I'll miss a few here. Sports Illustrated, NBC Sports, MLB.com, The Athletic. There are many more. The website is joeposnanski.com. The blog is Joe Blogs. And the latest entry, of course, is a breakdown of the Browns' victory over the Texans on Sunday with a bit of an explainer on the curious call by Houston coach David Culley. I thought was interesting. So Joe is here because he has written another book. It is called The Baseball 100, published by Simon & Schuster. The foreword written by George Will. There's going to be a discussion of the book on this show, but also another discussion with noted baseball writer, historian, and former Red Sox senior advisor Bill James on September 29th. That's a week from Wednesday, at the Unity Temple on the Plaza, the Sanctuary, and that's on West 47th Street, and it's presented by Rainy Day Books. Okay, Joe, let's talk about this. The Baseball 100. To me, it just you're telling the story, basically the history of baseball through its greatest players. Not necessarily hard, rankings of these, although I do want to get into a couple of them. But it's basically the history of the game in, I might add, 800 words or a little more.
Yeah, I would say a little more than that. I think the total at some point early on, it was becoming clear that if I was really going to do 100 of these essays, that the total was going to come out and it was going to be larger than Moby Dick. The book was going to be bigger than Moby Dick, and then we passed Moby Dick at like number 31 or something. I mean, it is out of control. It's 900 pages, but I'm glad you said that, because it is sort of my effort at telling the history of baseball through these 100 players, and of course the rankings are important, and I'm glad you said that, because I know that as I do go through the media spree that I will be going on over the next couple of weeks, basically every single radio show, television show, newspaper interview that I do will essentially begin with, how could you rank this person here, right? Like that is going to be the whole heart of the conversation, and which is fine, and I'm happy to have those conversations. But this really was more about that, about telling the story of the game, telling the story of these players. And I hope it works. I hope that people are going to love it. The early The early response has been amazing, and people seem to get that this is sort of my life's work in a lot of ways.
Your life's work. Listen, these are things you've thought about your whole life, right? I mean, these are these players and this game. It's just a matter of putting it down on paper, really, isn't it? And I don't know what comes after this for you. I believe Simon and Schuster called it your Magnus Opum. So I like opus. I like that. So
Magnum opus. Yeah, I didn't even know what that was. I just but of course, the great thing is you mentioned my website, joeposnanski.com, my newsletter. I'm already counting down the 101 greatest NFL players in history right now. That's literally, I'm in the middle of doing that because I'm a crazy person and cannot stop doing crazy things. But look at this. Here's the thing. I got the book right here. Look at how thick this is. This is if you buy this book, I am guaranteeing that if you have like a light bulb to change in the house or whatever, just step on this. This will totally help you. You can use it I actually have a friend who needed to cap his chimney, and he literally put this on top of his chimney. This is a multi-use book for sure.
But only
if there's an intruder, you could put it under your shirt and you'd be.
It will. It's not guaranteed to stop bullets, but I'm thinking for like a typical gauge bullet, it'll stop right at Nap Lajoie. I think like right around there is where it's actually going to stop. So. Man, this book was so much fun, guys. I mean, you all know me, and you know how much I love the game, and you know how much I love the history of the game. And for me, this was, it was a lot of work and it was a lot of hard work, but it was really what's better, what's more joyful for me than going out and writing about Roberto Clemente or writing about Sandy Koufax or writing about Albert Pujols or, that's what I live for. So that I hope that all shines through as the book come out.
And not Bo Jackson, but we'll get to that in a moment. Vahe, I saw where you had a copy of the book.
Well, thank you, Blair. And I just want to say, as soon as I got out of traction after carrying it back from North Carolina, where I saw Joe, I did indeed use it to change a light bulb. No, but Joe, it's just the thing I do want to speak to. It really is the feeling of labor of love, and that's the joy you bring to your work in general. But here you are drilling into really, I think, what's most in your heart and soul. And I haven't had a chance to read the whole thing. In fact, I haven't had a chance to read as much of it as I would have liked by now. But I was struck by one thing in the acknowledgments about that story you told about Billy Williams. And the reason I bring that up is, and I wonder if you could share that, but also, am I right to understand that really speaks to a place of, just simple curiosity about the game and the places that takes you?
Yeah. Look, the Billy Williams story in my life I've told that story a lot. My daughter is there at KU, as some of you might know. And she is studying journalism despite my efforts to dissuade her from doing such a thing. And she's not interested in sports. She's like more interested in crime reporting, social justice, that kind of thing. But the one story that really resonated with her is she's working for the school paper and she's writing her stories. And the one story that really resonates with her is the Billy Williams story. I was not much older than she is now, and maybe even the same age that she is now. I was 20, 21 years old, and I was in a press box, and Billy Williams, it was the Charlotte team. They were the Charlotte Knights, and they were a Cubs team at that time. And Billy Williams was a traveling hitting coach for the Cubs. And so he was there in the press box with us. And, of course, I was sitting next to him, and I was in awe of this, great Hall of Fame player and gentleman, and what a very nice man. And at some point we just started talking a little bit, and I asked him a question, which is clearly a very dumb question to ask a Hall of Famer. I said to him, Mr. Williams, I've always wondered, what is the difference between a curveball and a slider? And I was 20 years old, and every part of me should have told me, don't ask such a basic, silly, stupid question to one of the all-time great hitters in the history of the game. But there was I wanted to know. I was genuinely curious. I mean, I kind of knew maybe, but I don't think I could have put it into words. And a few people around us, there were some media people there, kind of snickered and looked back at who is this idiot kid that's asking Billy Williams. But you know what Billy Williams did? He took my notebook and he started drawing like little lines explaining. And he spent 10 minutes. It was like a master class explaining the difference between curveballs and sliders, how they break. What's the difference when you're a hitter, when you're facing curveball versus facing a slider? What Bob Gibson's slider looked like compared to Steve Carlton's slider or Tom Seaver's slider. And he just kind of went through it all point by point. And it was, I learned more in those 10 minutes, 15 minutes than probably at any other point in my life about baseball. Just because I was having one of the professor explain to me, personally what the difference is. And at the end, he said something that really struck me. He said, don't let those guys get to you. They don't know the difference either. And I just thought that to me is the essence of what we do, which is, and all of us have had to do it. We have to ask stupid questions. The idea that anytime we try to act smarter than we are is when we get in trouble. And for me, I have no problem with that. I know that I'm pretty non-knowledgeable on basically everything. So I've always tried to follow that. And I want my daughter to follow that as well. It's not, there's no stupid questions. There are stupid questions. You just have to ask them sometimes.
Joe, I've heard you tell that story before, and perhaps at an Applebee's, actually.
It probably was.
One thing I've always wondered is, what if Billy Williams was just a jerk in that situation? What if Billy Williams went the other way and just sort of like, you're impressionable. You said you're 20, 21 years old or whatever. I've always wondered about that. Like, would we have lost like one of the great, like, and I'm not blowing smoke here, but would we have like one of the great baseball writing careers in the last 30 years or whatever? Would it have been crushed? Billy Williams, like,
yeah, would it be, as Vahe knows, I have had situations where people have yelled at me as a young reporter and was impressionable. Here's the interesting thing. It's a great question. And if he had been a jerk and maybe there was a part of me that knew he wasn't. I mean, maybe there was a part of me that knew I could ask. I don't know. But here's what I would also say. Even jerks love being asked stuff like that, right? Like even the biggest jerks. I remember I was at the Belmont, and what I know about baseball, is very little, but it's 1,000 times more than I know about horse racing. And I was at the Belmont, and there was one of the, I think the horse was going for the Triple Crown. I can't even remember, but it was one of the great trainers. And there was a whole question about this certain thing that he was taking for bleeding, that the horse was taking for bleeding. That is, maybe it's either legal at the Belmont and not legal at the other races, or it's illegal at the Belmont and legal at the other races. I can't remember all the details, but I know as little about it now as I did then. And we were in a group of reporters, and I just literally asked, whoever it was. I mean, it was like I say, one of the, I don't think it was Baffert, but it was Baffert-like. It was one of the 2 or 3 greatest trainers in history. And I said, okay, I know this is going to sound dumb, but what is this drug? What does it do? What, and you could feel the tension, but by the other writers, they were like, well, I was completely wasting their time. And you could feel the tension, but you know what? The guy gave me a great answer, because people love that stuff. People really do like it when you say, you know what? I'm stupid. Can you please help me? I need your help. Can you please explain this to me?
Note to self: don't downplay stupidity. Okay, very good.
Sam's heard me say this a lot of times, but I always find it very easy to play dumb. Comes naturally.
Hey, Joe, one of my favorite books, really of all time, is Bill James' Historical Abstract. Right, came out in 1986, and he listed not only the 100 greatest players in baseball history, he did it in career value and peak value. It was really interesting and fascinating, and had small essays on just about everybody on that list. And I'm sure you're familiar with this. And of course, you and Bill are friends. How is your book and your list different than what he did?
Well, it's inspired by Bill. I mean, there's no question. Bill's work, and he did it again when he did the new historical abstract. He counted down the 100 greatest players. So that played a big role. His list was more about the ranking, and it was very statistically driven. Mine is also statistically driven, but it also has, a lot of subjective elements to it. I think what's different, I mean, look, Bill is the standard, but I think what's different is I go much deeper into the players. I go much deeper into their stories. And I think I try to connect the players to each other in the way of telling this history of baseball. I mean, I think that's what's really different. I think, Bill's a great writer and doesn't get appreciated for that as much as he should. But Bill, there were certain players that Bill was like, okay, yeah, I'm super interested in this guy. I'm going to give you 4 pages on him. And then there were other players that he would just write pass. He would just, he wouldn't even write even a single sentence about them. And which was the way Bill wanted to do it. I mean, that, like I say, it was really more about the rankings and he ranked in the new historical abstract. He not only ranked the top 100 players, he ranked the 100 greatest players at each position. So, so he ranked the 100 greatest catchers and the 100 greatest third basemen. And so, it was much more about like an exercise along those lines. And for me, it was much more of a historical exercise, a story about the game. And I think mine's longer than his. I think I mean, he wrote a lot of other stuff in his and put a lot of statistical things in there. So I think more words in mine. That's my guess.
Joe, I was curious how you came to the decision to not so much just go straight rankings, and in some cases just associate guys with numbers like DiMaggio, I think, is the one that sticks out. Like what made you make that decision?
It's a great question, Lynn. There are a bunch of players in here who I connected to numbers rather than sort of just put them in the ranking of wherever the formula showed them to be. And there are a couple of reasons I did that. One is I kind of feel like ranking players is more of an art than it is a science. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of difference between number 31 and 34. I mean, there might be in the fans' perspective, but I mean, realistically, you could flop them and it's fine, and nobody would even know. I mean, it's except the fans of those 2 players. Those are the only people that would really know. And so I wanted to connect players with certain numbers. I felt like that would be the one that really struck me was Tom Seaver. And I thought to myself, Tom Seaver is such a beloved figure, obviously in New York. And I thought to myself, if I rank Tom Seaver number 33 or something, yeah, it'll be fine. There'll be people who think that's too high. There'll be people that think that's too low, whatever. But if I rank him number 41, they'll remember it because that's who he was. He wore number 41. And so the toughest one was DiMaggio. And you bring that up exactly. He's the one I had to move the furthest in order to make it work. And it's arguable if it works. I've already received a couple of emails from people who said that by ranking DiMaggio number 56, they're not buying the book. That's it. That literally, I wrote hundreds of thousands of words, but because I put DiMaggio at 56, they're not buying the book, which is fine. But to me, he is 56. Like I see the number 56, and the first thing I think of is Joe DiMaggio and his 56 game hitting streak. So I wanted him to be 56. I knew that nobody would ever forget that. And I tried to do that with a bunch of players, but it was most compelling, I think, with DiMaggio.
And Joe, one thing that certainly differentiates your list from those of Bill's, you included Negro League players and steroid era players. Of course, that's a timing issue as well. But how did you come to those conclusions?
Well, Yeah, Bill actually in his latest 100 did actually have Negro Leagues players in there. So he did not in the original list, but he later added them. There was never a question in my mind I was going to put Negro Leagues players in there. I mean, obviously you guys know how passionate I am about the Negro Leagues, how passionate I am about the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum in Kansas City, and Bob Kendrick and the great work they do. So there was never a question. The question was, where do you put them? And that was feel. Obviously, I didn't use statistics for them. I didn't use, the formula that I used for other players, obviously. So that was a lot of feel. I ranked them in my own mind against each other, like, who I thought was the greatest Negro Leagues player, number 2, number 3. And then finding where they belonged on the list was just a bit of a feel thing. The steroid thing was a little tougher. In my mind, this is not the Hall of Fame. This is the greatest players of all time. So I wanted to rank the players where I felt they belonged as the greatest players of all time. And that's not to say that I didn't sort of knock them down a little bit for steroid use. I'm sure I did. I'm sure that, as the formula came in, some of these guys would have been higher based purely on the formula. But then I think you have to incorporate a lot of things about who they were and what they accomplished and how they accomplished it. But that doesn't change the fact that Barry Bonds is the greatest hitter I ever saw. And it's something that I think, it's part of the fun. It's part of the debate. I'll tell you guys a story if you want a little later about what it meant to rank Barry Bonds number 3. So I'll give you that one in a bit.
Okay, well, let's take a break here and hear from our sponsor. And when we come back, we'll pick up with Joe Posnanski and the Stars coverage team.
The Kansas City Royals lineup is backed up by the region's strongest team in healthcare, the University of Kansas Health System. We both suit up with one goal in mind: to win. The University of Kansas Health System, official healthcare provider of the Royals.
Okay, we're back with Lynn Worthy, Vahe Gregorian, Sam Mellinger, and Joe Posnanski, whose book, The Baseball 100, is available because Vahe's got a copy of it, so we know it is available.
Well, I think Vahe actually has an early galley version of the book. He does not have the hardcover. The hardcover will not be available, and it was because I gave it to him. By the way, guys, nobody even mentioned I'm wearing Salvi. For Salvi.
We're going to get to Salvi in a moment here. I want to get your thoughts on Salvi, and maybe that's where we can reveal where Johnny Bench is on the list of the Baseball 100. But Barry Bonds, please.
Yes. So I'm at home with my wife and I guess both daughters at that time before my older daughter went off to college. And I had just written the Henry Aaron essay, or the essay had just run. And the phone rings and it's a Milwaukee number. And all of you know, it's usually if you get a number from a city you don't know, it's probably a talk radio person wanting to talk or something. So I wasn't going to answer it. And my wife said, yeah, you probably ought to answer it. And so I did. And it was actually former commissioner of baseball, Bud Selig. And Bud had called me. Of course, he was very close to Mr. Aaron. They were very good friends. And he wanted to call me to effusively praise the essay that I had written about Hank Aaron, which was incredibly touching. And I mean, he just went on and on and on. One of the best things he'd ever read on Hank Aaron, or, it was very, very nice. And, he had found my number. I believe it or not, I'm not normally just chatting away with Bud Selig. And so it was very, very nice. And then he said, I see you ranked him number 4. Who do you have ranked ahead of him? And I said, I have Barry Bonds. And boy, every good word that he had said about me before that, gone, just gone. And he spent the next 10 minutes yelling at me. So it was really a very lovely conversation with Bud Selig.
That's great. Maybe a good time to reveal 1 and 2, since we know now 3 and 4.
Although I will say, so just so you know, and I think I told the story to Vahe, a few weeks ago, I did an event with John Grisham, which was really, really cool. You know, John Grisham has a new book out, or it's not that new anymore, but called Sully about basketball. I mean, have you guys read it? It's really kind of fun. Yeah, the Blair, you guys, basketball guys, it's kind of fun. Anyway, I did this event with him, and I was emceeing it. It was his event, and we had a great conversation. But at some point, it came up that I had this Baseball 100 coming out, and he asked me a bunch of questions. He's a big, big baseball fan. He asked me a bunch of questions about it, and then finally he said, okay, who's number one on your list? And I'm like, John, I'm not asking you to reveal the ending to your book. I mean, that come on. So it's not a secret. I have Babe Ruth at number 2 and Willie Mays at number 1, which is probably, I would say, has probably, there are like five or six things that draw the most ire from people. You know, one is where you have Barry Bonds having DiMaggio at 56, Koufax is too low, Ishiro's too low, various things like that. But probably number 1 on that list is ranking Willie Mays over Babe Ruth. I can explain it, but I think it's better in the book. I think they're both obviously legendary figures, but to me, it felt right to put Willie Mays at number 1, and I'm happy that I did.
Okay, so maybe when we revisit this list in about 10 years, this player can be added to the list. Okay, Beth, let's run the clip.
Long pause. Now the pitch, and a breaking ball is hit high and deep, left center field. That's way back, and that ball is gone. Number 46 for Salvador Perez, and the Royals' lead is 7-0. That pitch hung up for Salvi, and he smashed it into the bleachers above that 19-foot high wall in left field. Salvador Perez, home run number 46, RBIs 114 and 115, and he's now, for the moment, tied Vladimir Guerrero Jr. for the Major League home run lead, both with 46. Salvi getting a big hug from Whit Merrifield as he comes back to the dugout.
What wasn't mentioned was Salvador Perez surpassing Johnny Bench for the most home runs in a season by a catcher or a player who has spent at least 75% of his innings as a catcher. So just an unbelievable season, unlike anything we've seen from Salvador Perez. With his next home run, he'll be 20 higher than his previous career. So Joe, in town, and you're in town enough. I mean, there are a lot of conversations about, will he become a Hall of Famer? Where should he end up in the AL MVP race this year? But those are questions that create fun conversations. But it's just been a joy to watch this guy this year.
I think he's been a joy since he came up. You know, actually, if people. I just got the alert. If people go to joeposnanski.com, I wrote about Salvi, and it's apparently was posted by my editor while we're talking. So
during the clip.
During the clip, exactly the same time. But what I talked about in there, and Sam and Blair, you'll remember this, Lynn and Vahe, you caught him a little bit later. When he first came up, there was this real excitement within the Royals organization that did not match up with the sort of general scouting view of him. Like scouts kind of thought, okay, he's good defensively, he's unbelievably slow, his bat speed is so. He'll probably be fine. But he's going to be a good defensive catcher, and the Royals were no good then, and it was like there was just a sort of an overall. But within the Royals organization, there was this real excitement because, as we all know, Dayton Moore and JJ Piccolo and those guys, what they really love are players who just love the game, right? The players that just are utterly driven by the joy that they feel for playing baseball. And that's what he had from the very beginning, right? From the very start, from the day they signed him at age 17, he was just so joyous about baseball. So they always knew that there was something super special about him. And then, of course, people in Kansas City found that out pretty quickly. The team got better right as he got better. And then, of course, the back-to-back pennants and the World Series, and he played such a big role in that. So I think he's always been a joy, and you always knew you were going to get everything that he had. And to see him come back off of the elbow injury, missing the whole year, to come back even last year, what we were seeing from him was completely different and new than what we'd seen before. And this year has just been unbelievable. I just, it's one of those, it's so fun to watch and so much fun for Kansas City fans, but it's also just this sense of pride for him. You just like, this is good things happening to good people.
Yeah, look, he wasn't chopped liver before, right? He was World Series MVP, but as you said, Joe, to have the season he had last year, it was almost like, okay, he did that not only in an abbreviated season, but even more abbreviated for him, right? I think he only played in 39 or 40 games of the 60. Anybody can have anybody, right? But many people can have hot streaks, over that sort of time. But the fact that he carried it into this year means he is just a different kind of hitter. And listen, I think even Kansas City fans would love to see him one day be an AL MVP. Not going to happen this year, is it?
No, not this year. Look, Shohei Ohtani had the MVP one in March, I think. So, it's not going to happen this year, but he'll get votes. I mean, he will finish higher in the MVP than he ever has before, for sure. But again, breaking Bench's home run record, which is a weird record because obviously Salvi's hit 15 of these home runs as a DH, and so it's a weird record. Like Javi Lopez actually hit 41 homers as a catcher, so that's sort of a record too. But breaking Johnny Bench's record, the one that I think we would consider the record, it's amazing. And by the way, you guys saw Johnny Bench's response to it, which was wonderful. And it's always great to see older legendary players sort of really appreciate the players of today, because I don't think we see that all the time.
No, that was cool. The Johnny Bench response was really neat. All right, just a couple quick things, Joe. How about what is your take on the Cleveland Guardians?
Wow. It's still weird to me. Look, of course, I'm thrilled they got rid of the name. I mean, I've been wanting them to do that for years and years and years, and I'm thrilled they got rid of the old name. And I love that the Guardians is a very Cleveland thing. It connects to the Guardians of Traffic on the Hope Bridge, and so I love that. The thing that's weird is it doesn't sound any better now than it did when they announced it. And I realize we haven't even started yet. They aren't officially the Guardians yet. They haven't actually, but it doesn't, like, every name, no matter how goofy it sounds at first, after a month or two, you're like, all right, maybe I'm sort of used to the Las Vegas Raiders or something. I'm still not used to it. It still sounds really goofy to me, but I'm hoping once they put out the full gamut, once they start wearing the uniforms and everything else, it'll start to feel right.
All right, and as you mentioned earlier, you're among your current projects is professional football's top 100 players of all time, leading the list of the second 100 players. That would be 101 through 200. There isn't a 101 through 200. There's just a 101. Is a quarterback who is coming off a loss, I might add.
That was his fault. Yeah, blame him. He didn't play well enough in that game for them to win that game. Yeah,
to get or jump into the top 100, obviously. So tell us about the list and how is this going to unfold, and when will we see a top 10?
Yeah, well, it's good. It's going to unfold over the whole season. I'm going to start doing them. There'll be 2 essays a week, but they'll cover more than 2 players. This was in a lot of ways trickier and tougher than baseball because it's a lot more complicated. It's a lot more of a team sport. The positions are much, it's not that hard to compare a left fielder and a right fielder or a second baseman or a shortstop or whatever. but trying to compare a cornerback with a left tackle is pretty ridiculous. Plus, you don't have many great stats to work off of on most of the players, and so on and so forth. But I think it's a feel thing. I think football is more of an emotional game anyway, in a lot of ways, and I'm really liking the list that I came up with. I feel really good about it. I feel really good about Patrick Mahomes being number 101 because already people are screaming at me that he's way too high and he's way too low. It's amazing. It's amazing how that works. There are people who think it's a joke that nobody who's only in his full year of playing could possibly be one of the greatest players of all time. And then, of course, the others that think who's better than him. And they're all right. Everybody's right. That's the great thing about doing these kinds of lists is everybody's right.
Hey, can I point out one thing here, guys? Sorry, this is my Knicks Carmelo moment. But and Joe, I love you. You know that. You're like
Sure.
a writing hero to me, and I hope to see you when you're in town next week. But the shout out that you gave to your shirt, little KC, how come when you went on SportsBeat Live with the New York Post with Vac, you had a Yankee shirt on?
Well, yeah, that's right. And I just did something with Scott Simon where I wore a Cubs jersey. So I'm not saying I personalized this for you. I'm saying that this is for Salvi. And when I woke up this morning, I said, I'm going to put this shirt on for Salvi. And maybe I'll also be on with the Kansas City guys. That'll work out really neatly. So yeah, no, it's weird because my whole closet now is I'm doing I'm doing obviously many different cities over the next couple of weeks virtually. Man, I've got a closet filled with every one of their clothes. So yeah, you're looking at the world's biggest Phillies fan in a couple of hours. So there you go. It's funny when I was on with the Yankees, they really were pushing me to offer praise for Derek Jeter, and you guys probably know I'm not the world's biggest Yankees or Derek Jeter fan, and I'm not an anti Derek Jeter. It's just he was the guy I love to hate, and so they got me to do that. And so I was on Twitter and they were mocking me for saying all these nice things about Derek Jeter. And I just want to say for the record that Yankees buy sneakers too. So that's basically everybody is an audience member at this point.
All right. I just hope in a couple hours you'll be able to defend Richie Ashburn. All right. Listen, the book is called The Baseball 100. It is fantastic. Magnum opus is how it's described. And Joe is going to be in Kansas City next week. He'll be part of a discussion with Bill James. We talked about him earlier. It's a week from Wednesday, September 29th, Unity Temple on the Plaza. That's on 47th Street, presented by Rainy Day Books. Joe, can't thank you enough for joining us. Hope to see you in town next week. And thanks to Sam, Lynn, and Vahe and our producer, Beth Welsh, for coordinating this. And we will do this again next week. Maybe not with Joe, but we'll be back next week talking Royals with you. Thanks a lot.